And so, well, I guess I think we all know each other, but we can go ahead and do introductions for anybody who watches the recording. So I'm Emma Rarick. I'm an environmental planner with NRPC. So I'm doing the room. Jane, if you like.
Jane Bowles, I live on Robinson Pond.
Garrison Beck, project manager, water resource specialist with VHB.
Elvis, DEMA town engineer, and then I got Dawn Kirkland, civil engineer.
And I'm Jeff Marcoux from Department of Environmental Services.
Great, and thank you all for taking time today to meet. So I think it was Tuesday morning, I sent out the draft plan. And so this is the final product of this grant funded project. So this was a 604B grant from the state, which is federal money, and we had some very clear objectives laid out. It's been almost a 3-year process, which I kind of can't believe.
We had a similar grant that we got 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And we had to do a wrap-up requirement, like just so you are right now, and I couldn't
Yeah.
believe it. I could not believe it's been 2 years. I was shocked. I was like, I thought we just got this last year. It went by quick. So the same thing with this one. I remember when we got this. It's just crazy, isn't it?
It is. I can't believe it. And so the way this worked, we contracted with VHB to do the bulk of the data gathering and analysis, and then we extended the project to gather more data, the sediment data from the bottom of the pond, which is something that the town of Hudson opted to do, so we could take that information and help inform the final products, the final recommendations. And so that brings us all to here. So I sent out the final document, which a lot of it is, as you go through, there's some sort of introductory background information that I wrote for the sort of the body of the document, but really a lot of the information or the interesting parts are in the appendices, which primarily came from VHB, and then also there's one from DK Water Resource Consulting with the sediment sample results. And this is a draft. I am looking for comments. I'm looking for feedback. I already have some comments from Jeff that I know I need to make some changes for. I'm sure there will be some more changes. But if you see anything in here as you look through that is inaccurate, please let me know. Or any vital information that is missing, please let me know, or anything that should be cut, because I tried to, I'm a pretty concise writer, but I tried to include a lot of things, but if there are things that are in there that are just not relevant, that make it bulkier than it needs to be, please let me know and I'd be happy to cut it. So I guess that's my quick overview. I don't think we need to go and walk through it all today, but I could highlight a few things. Probably the most, maybe some of the most useful things in here are the BMP matrices, Appendix 2 and Appendix 3, which include recommendations of potential actions that the town of Hudson can take to improve the water quality in Robinson Pond, to reduce the amount of phosphorus that's entering the pond and helping to cause those cyanobacteria blooms. Those matrices are, one page each. They lay things out nicely. They talk about potential costs. And then also maybe very useful for the town of Hudson is that MS4 permit crosswalk with the EPA 9 element table, because I know a lot of this stuff can be useful for the town of Hudson's MS4 requirements. So yes, please, if you have feedback right now or in the next couple of weeks, please let me know for that document. And I think so that's what I wanted to say about the document. I think the bulk of our conversation today could be about next steps. Now that we're wrapping this up, what happens next? Because it's, you know, the all the work around the pond is not done. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And this is the end of this grant funded project. But yeah, what happens now? And I have a few things that I can highlight, but I think it's something that please jump in, take over,
Sure,
however you
yeah,
wanna do
yeah,
this.
yeah.
We did talk with, my goodness, I'm not gonna remember his name now. But somebody, excuse me, Jeff and Garrison and I spoke with somebody else from DES a few months ago about for their feedback on sort of what can we do next, and we came up with some ideas during that conversation. Some of which is relatively straightforward, like continue the VLAP program, continue gathering that data on the pond, because without that water quality data, we don't have a lot to go on. We need that water quality data. We need to see how the lake is, you know, if things are changing or maintaining in the lake. That's important data. Another thing was that we need to, ideally, it would be good to get new bathymetric data on the lake, because the most recent that we could find is from 1988, I think. It's almost as old as I am. So that would be something that could help inform calculations and just get a more accurate picture of the current status of the lake. And I'm sure that technology has changed a little bit since 1988 when they did that, gathered that data. And one of the big, and so with that data, a full watershed-based plan, it would be good to complete that. This is some bits and pieces of a watershed based plan, but doing more of that with up-to-date calculations on the amount of like where the phosphorus is coming, the phosphorus loading, where it's coming from, would be useful. Getting better data on septic systems if possible, because that's sort of a murky area. And those are some concrete things that we had talked about. And so do you have anything to add to that, or what are your?
Yeah, I mean, so I think everybody in the group probably already has sense. We were just talking before you guys joined online. We've been chatting here, catching everybody up on what's been going on at the town. And Jeff, I think you're up to speed, but the town is, you know, the town's pursuing stormwater treatment at the boat launch and the beach area. The town-owned property is there, so we're actively looking at improvements there for stormwater treatment and nutrient reduction crediting under the MS4 program. So that's active right now. We're working on that to achieve the it's Appendix F of the MS4 permit, achieve the nutrient reduction requirements in that permit. That is those requirements, again, around point sources of stormwater. The town has to follow a defined schedule of improvements or pollutant load reductions, I should say, between both structural and non-structural reductions. So that includes things like street sweeping and catch basin cleaning, which the town is already doing, and just making sure that we're tracking that work and documenting the pollutant reduction credits within the Robinson watershed specifically. So that's happening right now under the MS4 program. And like I said, that Appendix F gives a pretty defined schedule on how the town can meet those requirements. But obviously that only applies to the municipal system. So I think some places where these two efforts kind of overlap is other partners within the watershed, you know, other landowners, private landowners talking about public education and outreach. Opportunities there for, like you said, Emma, you know, kind of septic systems are just generally a big unknown for any lakefront property. And so kind of any effort we can do to try to document that. But that all falls under, so we have kind of the, I should have started with the MS4 program that the town has to comply with. You know, the town is the permittee there, and the MS4 program regulates the point sources of stormwater. So the town's closed drainage system is really what's regulated there. The 604B and 319 grant programs address all of the other non-point sources that could be occurring within the watershed. So that's I think an important tool to keep in the toolbox for this watershed. And could, you know, like you said, Emma, if partners wanted to move ahead with a potential 319 grant opportunity, which I don't know if you guys have discussed that at all, Emma and Jeff, but that could be, that could potentially fund, you know, the full watershed management plan, the 9-element plan, but also could address some of these other kind of watershed-wide non-point source loading contributions to the pond, which could include things like septic systems or other, you know, not closed drainage system related erosion issues or you know, changes in land use. One of the things that the town has to do going forward under the MS4 program is, for this watershed specifically, track from basically starting this year going forward, tracking and new developments within the town and keeping sort of an updated accounting of our estimated nutrient load within the watershed. So that, you know, a lot of these things sort of play off of each other, and that could help be informed by a potential 319 program or a full watershed based plan and kind of update. So one of the items that it was Dave Neals, who I also forgot his name, but I was fortunate to look up on my email. So one of the things Dave Neals was mentioning is that we do have the TMDL for the watershed, but you know, that's over 10 years old now. And so I think a new watershed planning effort, a full effort, could go in and update those figures. And as we've done through this process, you know, we have some key metrics that we didn't have from that TMDL, which are, which the most key is the updated sediment results and the additional, you know, we've got 10 plus more years of water quality data to work with as well. So those are key items, and that was the reason, major reason for extending this grant program so that we could get that, which, you know, would be key in updating a full watershed management plan. So, I mean, I'm curious for your thoughts, Jeff, but, you know, in my experience, many times when a local watershed organization or a planning organization gets a 604B grant, in many cases, that's precursor to a 319 watershed watershed grant implementation grant. So I guess I'm curious, Jeff, if you have thoughts on with the work that's been done so far, could NRPC or the town be eligible to pursue a 319 implementation grant at this phase to kind of implement some of these next steps?
I think probably given the recommendations that came through the plan and what we talked with Dave about, I think probably the logical next step is to look at either 604B grant or an SRF loan again. To do those additional planning steps. One of the reasons that this sort of became maybe extra critical here is that, you know, when the TMDL was completed, it looked like internal loading, internal phosphorus loading for Robinson was not a significant contributor. And then because of all the extra work that has been done, it looks like it was, you know, it was looking like internal phosphorus loading might be a rather significant contributor, you know, in that 25% range. That's pretty big deal. So that, you know, that determination sort of resets your path a little bit, or it sort of raises the priority, I would say, of filling in those missing pieces that Dave talked about, because I think, you know, when you're talking about internal loading that's that high, one of the management actions you're probably going to be thinking about in the near future is the potential for an in-lake treatment.
Right.
And in order to have the, you know, all the pieces you need to sort of get a permit and correctly, you know, select a treatment and do dosage and all those things, are really based on will be informed by those things like the bathymetry and the, you know, the full phosphorus budget based on, you know, current data, and you know, the septic survey to some degree as well. But so the, you know, the finding of the much higher internal loading rate, I think, sort of set that path towards filling in those pieces for the you know, those additional watershed management plan pieces. It made those things even more important than I think we were thinking they would be.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that conversation we had with Dave too. So,
Guys, before we go any further, just to put a pin on this real quick. You know, so obviously we have something we got to deal with, but you know, what I'm dealing with from a municipality standpoint is, first of all, people don't even understand, you know, phosphorus loading and all this. And I'm sure you hear this a lot, but you know, I'm hearing about treatment, and I've talked to Garrison about this, and there's a couple of things we're doing, but you know, my biggest concern is like, I'm going to have a hard time selling this to the voters here and raise the money we need to. I mean, we're not talking about 10 grand either, or 20 grand or 100 grand. You're talking about, you know, over $500,000, $1 million all day long. And it could be like an ongoing thing for years to come. What are you guys seeing in the other communities? How they're dealing with this? Because I'm just, you know, we're all for doing the right thing and complying, and that's been always the case. But I got to tell you, if they have to pick between a bridge repair and this, it's not happening. And I understand. So I'm just kind of thinking of worst case scenario. Like, what are you seeing out there? It's happening with other communities. Like, how are they doing this? I mean, Slow and Steady wins the race over here in Hudson, but I'm hearing all this, and I'm like, all I hear is dollar signs, and I'm like, how am I going to explain this to people? You know, the feedback is, I don't even use it. What do I care? Well, you still got to comply. I'm not doing it. You know, what do I do? How do I handle that piece?
That's a heck of a question, Elvis. I mean, one of the
loaded question, right? It's a loaded question, Jeff.
I think one of the, you know, the short answers is grants.
Right.
You know, when you come down to trying to obtain the funding to do an in-lake treatment, you apply for grants, and we recently had state budget that allowed for $1 million of funding for in-lake treatments. Now that $1 million has been allocated to other projects already, but
So
we're
that's-
hopeful that this
so that's-
that this continues.
But that's like $1 million per year for the entire New Hampshire, right? No, or is that per community?
No, it is $1 million for the entirety of New Hampshire.
Here we go.
So-
Okay.
But what happens is, at least as of right now, there hasn't been a huge crush all at once because of the work that's required to do the upfront work that is required to get to the point where you are ready to do an in-lake treatment.
Gotcha.
Because you are on the path to doing that,
Mm-hmm.
I think that positions you well to be, near the top of the list as opposed to near the bottom of the list. And the other thing that you have to consider is that, the universe of ponds that are, or lakes or ponds that are trying to access the money is not the entirety of the state, really,
Right.
because it's pretty much focused on the more urbanized areas,
Mhm.
generally speaking. So, realistically, will you get money to treat the lake next year? Probably not.
Not right.
But this
So
is,
maybe the following. Yeah.
it's about positioning yourself to get into the queue, to get to the point where if it looks like you will be ready to go and say, look, we know we have 25% internal
Grants,
load. We
yeah.
know we need an internal treatment. Let's get into the queue. Let's start applying for grants.
What do you envision for like a lake treatment? Because I've heard different things, but what are you guys looking for, like, lake treatment on your end? Like what are some of the things you're entertaining? So I have
You
an
mean
idea to what it consists of.
As far as like what physically is done with the
Yeah.
lake, is that what
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yes.
it's sort of case by case, I guess, but
Mhm.
in most cases, or in the few cases that we've really dealt with to date, it has been alum. It's a chemical
Yeah.
alum treatment.
I know that you guys have had, you were struggling with that application at first. Is that something that you just kind of like, all right, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna have to try it out. I know there was a little bit of a pushback at first, and it's like, is that what seems to be the theme now? Like, we're just gonna try this out and then see how it goes. Is that it? I mean, it makes
I
the
think-
most sense to me from a
Yeah.
treatment standpoint.
I mean, I think, as far as alum treatment goes, it's,
Yep.
it's an accepted and well-used technology. It's
Yeah.
done pretty frequently. It hasn't been done here a
Right.
ton, but it's
right.
been done some.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it personally. I just, when we've talked about this with, Garrison from VHB and Concom, I remember one of the Concom members brought it up, and it's like, yeah, it's not ideal, but it's a method, and it's just, so what I'm hearing from you, it seems like it's something that's been applied in the past, it's currently being utilized, and that could be a treatment. Because, when I hear treatment, or when people hear treatment, they're like, oh, treatment facility, like, what are you doing now? Like a
Yeah.
wastewater treatment, a water treatment? Like, no. We're not bringing water in, doing something, putting
Right.
it back. It's just gonna be not any different than we do the algae treatment and other
Right.
treatment
Yeah.
right now.
Right. And that's,
So-
it is another thing to think about, is that I think treatment conveys that, like, oh, we're going to have to do this all the time.
Right,
But the reality is that the projected life cycle of a treatment seems to be about 10 years.
right.
So the idea is that,
Once you do it, you
you
should be
do
good
it
for a little bit.
once,
Yeah,
and it carries you through for 10 years until you've gotten the watershed load and so forth under control,
gotcha.
or the internal load is sufficiently locked up that you shouldn't have to retreat
Every year,
every
Every
certainly
year,
not
right.
every year, maybe
Not
even not
every-
even
right.
10 every 10 years.
right.
So the
Well, that's
hope
good
is
to
that
hear. Gotcha.
it's you do it, and then that is a longish term solution to your problems, and especially when you're looking at like sort of 25% load, you have to think that, like, a significant portion of your cyanobacteria blooms and so forth are being triggered by internal loading. So it is, while it may not happen immediately, it's sort of something that I would keep on your radar as a future management option for Robinson.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like it because it's kind of like in line to what we're doing for treatments right now, Robinson and Tonic. So it's just a funding, and all I'm thinking of is, go back to Conservation Commission, see what they have for money, because they're the ones that kind of paying for the treatment right now anyways. So we'll figure it out. But okay, that's good to hear that you guys are using that already as a method. Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Elvis, there's kind of two pathways here as far as like grant funding in the short term, which
Mhm.
is, as Jeff was saying, kind of the 604B grant, which is a DES grant, a planning grant to
Yeah.
address kind of the non-point source stuff that we were talking about. So, we could talk the DES a little further, but maybe that could be something that maybe would help us get better pond bathymetry to update our internal loading estimates. That could be something that looks into septic system loading, that could look into other kind of erosion control issues around the watershed generally. And then on kind of the MS4 side, potentially we could be looking at the SRF funding that's dedicated to more towards that discrete point source MS4 avenue. So those might be two kind of funding pathways that the town or NRPC could explore, or in the short term. And then that would get us to the place where we have enough data to say, okay, do we want to go ahead with does it make sense to go ahead with the plan for an in-lake treatment option? At which time, potentially that's a 319 program, or if the town were to, if the state were to have a new cyanobacteria mitigation fund by the time we were prepared to do that. That could be, the 604B and SRF could kind of get you to the place where you're ready to decide on an in-lake treatment option, and if so, how that gets funded. So I don't think we're implying that everything's falling on the town's shoulder for funding.
One thing I'm just thinking of is there is a capital reserve fund for Robinson Pond or for the ponds. I don't know if it's just for Robinson or in general. And I was thinking I needed to ask our trustees how much money was in that capital reserve fund. And also, every year at town meeting, we have warrant articles submitted for adding money to these capital reserve funds.
Yeah.
And I think that should be something that is on the town's warrant, every year, to add some money there. Or from the town surplus at the end of the year, or however you want, or put a specific amount in or something, but just keep that capital reserve fund in mind and keep it growing for these kinds of things. That would be Elvis to take the lead on that. Have the consequence.
Yeah, and I gotta ask for 1,000 other things too, so that how that goes. You've seen those meetings, they beat on me nonstop, and then finally I'm like, fine, I won't ask for anything. Yeah, there's different mechanisms here. The issue that we have is there's a lot to be asked for, and the longer the list is, the more difficult it is to have the taxpayers vote on things. Last year we had a very long ballot and it didn't go well. So we're very cautious, what we ask for. But yeah, ideally you would ask for it, make the case, and it all depends on the mood of the taxpayers that day, how they vote on it. You know how that goes. But we'll see. I wanna explore first maybe a way to come up with some of these funds through the Conservation Commission. And if not, I can't put it on my budget. It's a no-go. So I'll have to be either a warrant article or some kind of setting up some capital reserve funds. But I'm telling you, the list, every time it gets longer, they get upset, and they're just like, when is it going to end? And And then they're gonna vote no on budgets and everything else that goes with it, so have to be a little bit sensitive to that, but noted, and we'll go from there.
Jeff, could you, do you mind reminding the group, if you have it at your fingertips, what the kind of application process and schedule especially is for if somebody wanted to go forward with a 604B or 319 in the future? Just what's the kind of yearly, is that a, July 30th deadline, or how that process works?
Yeah, so both section 319 and the 604B grants are, always pending continued federal appropriation. They have been, we've received them annually for a very long time. We hope that continues. But we're basically on the timeline for the two is pretty similar. They are typically released early summer-ish, the request for the proposals. For the section 319 grants, that takes the form of a pre-proposal. It's about a 4-page thing. You're basically filling in and giving a general sense of roughly how much money you would be looking for and general project description. The section 604B grants are actually a little bit simpler. Well, it's a little bit shorter. I don't know that I will say it's simpler. Sometimes shorter is harder. But it's a 3-page letter of interest, I believe we're calling it. It's an LOI, whether that's a letter of interest or letter of intent, I have forgotten, but it is an LOI, and it is a letter stating your interest in receiving a 604B grant. Both of those things are open right now. And they'd be looking for either, the letters or the pre-proposals to be due. And I believe it's mid-September. I think it's September 19th, maybe. And then the process, sort of proceeds on from there, where we would select based upon the pre-proposal or letter of interest, a subset of proposals to move forward to a full proposal stage, which is obviously more detailed and includes a budget and proposed tasks and all of that. And then, the hope is that we get them selected, they go to EPA, EPA says, okay, and then they go to governor and council for state approval in spring, basically. So we work on those over the winter, and hopefully by spring you have a grant ready to go. But yeah, out of all that I just said, I guess the most important part is that both of those things are open right now. So if you're considering 604B or a 319, you'd want to start thinking about submitting those things now, or getting to work on them, getting the draft started now.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks, Jeff. So I think those are the big items on the table. I mean, I think there definitely seems to me to be the interest and engagement from kind of the interested parties in proceeding with something here. Obviously the town has their own MS4 compliance schedules and projects going on. And so SRF funding, we mentioned, is an option as well, but that process, as far as this year, those pre-proposals have already closed. That was May, I believe. But that is an annual process as well. But I guess the question is, if either the town or NRPC would be interested in pursuing sounds like most appropriate at this stage would be another 604B grant to finalize a watershed management plan. So I don't know, Elvis, Don, what your temperature is on that, or Emma, of what, if NRPC is that avenue for an additional 604B. I mean, you guys have the mechanism for this one already, and I don't know how easily that went for you guys, but or how often you do these grant funds, but
Yeah, we currently have a 604B, another project for the Sauhegan River. So we've done that a couple of times.
Yeah. Don, what's your temperature now that Elvis has left the room?
My temperature is that Elvis makes all final decisions and I don't dare speak for him.
Man.
I can just tell you that all of our budgets are tight. The budget committee's already meeting. They're telling us that we're getting, or their goal is zero money next year and zero increases next year for everything. So, I don't know how we would fund it ourselves, but.
Sure, yeah.
Actually, Jeff, could you remind us, is there match requirement for 604?
No, there is not. So whatever grant amount you would get you would not have to provide a matching component for that.
Well, that's good news.
So at least that, Don and Elvis, if there was an interest in exploring, this next phase of the planning to get the watershed to a place where you could consider the 319 funding, which would be an implementation grant, or potentially other, if the state were to fund another cyanobacteria mitigation fund. To get to that point, it sounds like the next step would be 604B application. And I guess the question is just, if the town and or NRPC wanted to pursue that.
Well, NRPC is not gonna be able to have any more funding to do this. Obviously, this went through a grant, so I don't expect them to be like, yeah, here's some money to do something. I mean, so
We're talking about another grant.
Yeah, applying for another grant, whether that's something the town would want to pursue with us, how.
yeah, I mean, if that's the case, absolutely. What I would do that with a partnership between Conservation Commission and the town of Hudson and obviously NRPC like we did in the past. But the other thing too, Garrison, is if you have a different avenue, like you're talking about these other forms, I do have some funds available for grants. And so if there's something that could be done there as well, it could be a hybrid, we can pursue one thing and pursue something parallel as well. Like Jeff said, I think the best way to do this is go through grants and see if we can raise any money to do any of this.
Right.
I do have some funds available. I think I did get approved for $20,000 to pursue grants. This was one of them. This could be, one of the two that we could pursue, because 20 grand is not a lot of money. But remember, these funds are being used to figure out that other grant we're doing for Robinson Pond, Garrison, which is the $1 million, the park one. You remember? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, we were talking about that before the meeting.
Right. So that's something. So that 20 grand is only going to go so far. But if it's not a lot of effort for something to submit in and see what we can get from the state, I don't have a problem.
Okay, for the 604.
Yeah. So put something together. Give me an idea to what it's going to cost. If it's going to be $1 million to apply for it, Garrison, because you're not cheap either. I'm kidding. You're fine. Yeah, just let me know what the effort would be to put something together like that. It would make sense to me. Yeah, we can look at this. I mean, it's not going away, so it's not like something I can just put it off. We gotta deal with it. So Let's see if we can get any kind of funding that can help us out with this. Let me know what those efforts could look like, okay?
Yeah, and hopefully Jeff, I assume we could kind of lean on you for some advice and guidance there. It sounds like 604 would be a, relatively straightforward application process.
Yes, yeah, that's fair to say.
And we could work from the application that you guys prepared.
Yeah.
For
Yep.
this one.
Okay, well, that sounds like a solid next step.
Yeah, so it sounds like the town's willing to put in for 604.
Yeah.
This grant round.
Okay.
And then, we can figure out if that's in partnership with NRPC, what that kind of division looks like, how we wanna
Yeah.
make that happen.
Oh, I am gonna make it happen, and you know it. I gotta ask, how's everyone else doing out there with these? I mean, I just, I know we're not probably like the best ones out there. We're definitely not the worst. I know that much. I think we're pretty proactive here. We stay on top of things. We've been doing everything we could do. We continue to do that. But I mean, what is everyone else doing that doesn't have like a town engineer or the staff or just, this is all just too much. I mean, what are they doing, Jeff? Like I mean, you must be seeing this everywhere. Do they put their hands up if like, I don't know, I'm going to get another job soon enough anyway. It's not going to be my problem. Or I'm going to retire in a year. Guess what, Jeff? Not my problem.
Yeah.
How are they dealing with this? I mean, this is like an easy conversation. I get it. I'm here. I've been here a while. I can read the public. But what do you do with someone like, I just got here? What are you talking about? And I know, like, how do I handle this? And they got their board members and budget committee beating on them. And this is the last thing they want to deal with. How do you guys coping with that? Like, what's the feedback you're getting?
It's sort of all over the board.
Yeah.
It's really hard to say I think there are a number of communities that just aren't really doing much.
Right.
They're
If
sort of-
anything at all, they're like,
Yeah,
yeah,
they're
whatever.
just
We'll
sort of
deal with it when we get the fine. When
sitting and-
the administrative
sitting and
order saying
holding.
you got to do something.
Yeah. And then there are others that are, sort of in the same boat as you, but I would definitely say that, yeah, Hudson's probably seems to be of the more proactive and the SRF grants and loans have been tremendously helpful, I think, for a lot of communities because you can hire engineering assistants for places that don't have engineers. So yeah, leaning on SRF and yeah, it's just sort of all over the board.
Yeah, geez. I can't, I can't imagine being on your side and sitting, in your shoes and just trying to explain to someone that like you can't ignore this. This is something that's coming. We got to deal with it, and you got to find the funds, and we're here to help. I'm not doing it, Jeff. I'm not doing it. I got other problems. I got PFAS I got to worry about. I got this. I got that.
No, I know.
It's all coming together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I mean, the old timers here, they used to tell me, like when I started working, I've been here 10 years. And like Elvis, you can only do so much.
Yeah.
You can only do so much. You can only put so much in front of us. So I look at this and I'm like, all right, I got this situation. I got the PFOA. That's a bit more critical because you're drinking it. Here is like you're swimming on it. It's a watershed. I get it, but you're not drinking it, right? So if I have to go between that and that, I know what people are going to say. I'm going to focus on what's going to impact me health-wise, and that's more critical than this.
Yeah.
And then they'll be like, it's just, I can't imagine sitting in your and be like, we got to do this all a little bit at a time. And they're like, I'm not doing it. I can't handle it. It's too much.
I
Two
think
balls in the same air. It's a lot. It's a lot. And everyone is hurt financially. And it just comes across as every time we go back to them, we're asking them for more. And you can see the pressure building up. And it's only, I live in Sandown. I'm going to tell you, I don't go out to vote much because everything is kind of like steady, right? And it's like, there's no need for me. Everything is business as usual. And I got a tax bill and I almost fell off my chair. When I moved there 10 years ago, it was like $7,000 and I'm looking at 12,000 right now. And I almost fell off my chair. I'm like, what just happened? And let me tell you, I went out to vote in March with my wife for the first time in a long time. And a lot of other people did too. Nothing passed, Jeff. The school, the town, the warrant articles, they got voted down on salt and sand. That's how angry they were. They
I hear you.
killed
Yeah.
everything, and I think they even made it on WMUR saying one of the few communities that voted on everything. They were so angry, and it was just, and I was one of them. And I talked to a couple of people that were running for selectmen. I'm like, what are you guys like? What are you smoking? And he's like, it's all the schools. I was like, yeah, sure. Blame it on the schools. And it was mostly on that, but it's just like, holy smokes, it was too much. And
Yeah.
you're gonna pay until you can't pay. And when you can't pay, you're gonna vote no, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
But very tough. It's a very tough situation. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen, but so far the voters in Hudson be very generous, but I know it's not gonna go on like this forever either, and they're getting close, so we'll do a little bit small steps at a time, but
Yeah.
it's getting tough. It's getting tough. It's everyone is hurt.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, my depth of problems are not, you know, from the work focus is, you know, I'm water quality. I have to worry
Right.
about that. And I don't have,
Right.
you know, the same breadth of problems that you deal with.
Right.
So from my perspective, it's, you know, we should just try to lean on grants as much as we possibly can.
Right.
And, you know, that money is out there. You know, these 604B grants are, you know, I'm going to say effectively free. You know, they don't require any match. You have to do the applications, you have to do some administrative, but you know, the
Right.
money is there
Mhm.
for us to, you know, to try and pick up off the table and use.
Right.
You know, if you can use that in Hudson, so much the better, right? Like, you know,
Yeah.
let's get as much as you can for no cost to the taxpayers, and
Yeah.
we'll keep
I've
doing
been
that as much as
pushing.
possible.
Yeah, I've been pushing. So I got him to get 20 grand, which is a huge, because we get a lot of money from grants, like bridge aid, state aid. Like it's just been great, like 4 million last year. But it takes a lot of effort on us. It's been mostly engineering. And I'm trying to get the people here to understand that like sometimes it might be make sense for us financially to hire someone or hire a company to help us out with the grants. It pays for itself. It's really, there's a huge return there. It's so hard. It's so hard to add people. It's just, and I'm like, you got 4 million last year. You paid for the engineering department for the next 10 years. We don't need another body. We're, you know, it's going to cost us. It's just, but it's there. You know what I mean? Like you said, it's all in there. But we're going to do exactly what you said. We're going to lean hard on the SRF, the loans, for forgiveness, even if it's like 75%, it's better than nothing. You know, most ideally you would have it 100%, but those are the things we need to lean in. It just takes a lot of effort, and we're spread already so thin as it is. So we'll do the best we can. That's how that works. So, Emma and Garrison will work together trying to figure out what's next and what we can be done. And as far as this process goes, this is it, right? We're done. We got some comments to review. You'll have the final send out at some point, and this is it, right?
Exactly, that's it for this grant. Yep.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for all your effort. I know it was a lot of work, and you made it work. And I think the product looks really good in my opinion, but that's just me.
Yeah.
I thought
thanks,
you
Elvis.
guys, yeah, you did. You can tell it was a lot of effort put into it, and you guys take a lot of pride in what you do, and I want to thank you for that. And it will be a good base for us to add to Robinson Pond, which is getting a lot of attention right now. So I think this was a huge starting point.
Yeah.
And to get the ball rolling, and like VHB is very much involved now with the boat launch and the residential beach area, and I think it's picking up because of this, what we did. You know, we used your report to add momentum to it, so it was perfect timing and very important. It's very hard to make that first step, so to have you guys do this and run it, it's just been I've been piggybacking on that, and I've been just adding to it, and everyone seems to kind of
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
made my case, which was very helpful.
It's good momentum. Yeah, thank you, Elvis.
You got it. Thank you. That's all I got. Anything else from our favorite resident over there from Hudson?
No, thank you for all your work out there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Anytime. All right, Garrison, you got anything from me, or you just typing the proposal as we speak right now? Is that what you're working
All
on?
done. I'll be there in 30 seconds.
What is it, $900? I got a resident over there. She's gonna ask what the budget is, so you better watch it. Well, thank you very much for making the time. Emma, again, great job. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for all you do over there, and we're gonna keep bugging you to see if there's any, if you can throw a couple quarters this way, towards Hudson.
We will try.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Have a good
guys.
one.
Good. All right. Thanks, man.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.